In this video, we're going to be making an inventory system where we're going to be displaying 4 inventory items in a hotbar at the bottom of our screen. This is just going to be part 1, so we're just going to allow our player to collect these items, but he's not going to be able to use them yet. That's going to come in part 2. So let's get right on into it. The first thing that we're going to do is we are going to go into our scenes, and in in UI, we're going to make a new folder, and we're going to call this inventory. And inside of inventory, we're going to create a new script, and it's going to be called item data. So let's open this up, and let's give it a class name of item data. And we are going to extend a resource rather than a node. And what this is going to do is be the base class for all of our items in the game. And this class is going to need one signal, which is item used. So this is pretty self-explanatory. This is going to be emitted when an item is used, which can help us manage effects or animations. We're going to need a couple of export variables. We're going to have an ID, which is a string, default it to an empty string. We're going to have another export variable of name, which is a string. And it's also going to be an empty string. We're going to have an export variable of max stack size, which is going to be an integer, and we'll default to 99. We're going to have an export variable of texture, which is an atlas texture. And we're only going to have one method right now in this script, and it's going to be use. We pass in our player, and it returns a bool, and we just do item used dot emit, and we return true. Then we need to create another script inside of this folder, which is going to be called inventory item. Let's open that up and give it a class name of inventory item. And this is going to extend ref counted. So this is going to represent an actual item within our inventory, an item instance in our inventory. We're going to have two variables, one that's item data, which is of the type item data, which we just made, and another variable of quantity, which is just an integer. So this is going to reference, the item data is going to reference the item's static data, and then the quantity is going to reference the current stack size for this item. We're going to have one constructor method, which we're going to use to create a new inventory item. So we're going to use the init method, which is something I don't believe we've used yet in this series. And we are going to assign our item data. Sorry, we need to actually, in the init, we're going to be giving, so we're going to be passing in some variables. So we're going to do p underscore item data. It's going to be of type item data. Oops. And then we're going to do p quantity, which is an integer. And then we're going to assign our item data to the p item data, and then our quantity to the p quantity. So with that set up, now we need to make a global script. We need somewhere to manage this across our entire project. So we're going to go add another script to our globals, and we're going to call this the inventory manager. So let's open this up. We're not going to give this a class name because it's going to conflict inside of our globals. So while we're here, let's just go in and add this script into our globals. Make sure you press add, and I'm going to move this up a little bit above the XP manager. We'll close this. So we're going to have one signal inside of here, which is going to be inventory updated. And we're going to pass in what we're going to call slot data, like an item slot or an inventory slot data. It's going to be of a type of dictionary. And we're going to create a constant for max slots. This is going to be an integer and equal to 4. I'm only going to have 4 max slots in our hotbar inventory. You can change this if you'd like, but I think for demo purposes, 4 is going to be fine. We're only going to need one variable here right now. We're going to come back to this later, but for right now, we just need inventory, which is going to be a type dictionary, and it's going to be an empty dictionary to start. Then in our ready method, we need to initialize our empty slots. So we're going to loop through in the range of our max slots. So we'll loop through it 4 times, and we're just going to set everything at the inventory index that we're passing in to be null. So we're not going to have any items when we first launch the game. And then we're going to have one other basic item adding method, which we're going to call add item. We're going to pass in item data of the type item data, and it's actually going to return a bool. And in this method, we're going to, for slot index in our inventory, if inventory at the index of slot index equals null, then we're going to go proceed with adding it. So we do inventory slot index. Oh, fix this. Now we should be okay. Equal to our inventory item dot new. We pass in the item data. We give it a 1. So we're going to pass in that quantity of 1. And after that, we want to do our inventory updated, emit the signal. We're going to pass in our inventory. So it's the inventory dictionary. We return true. Otherwise, we return false. That's all we have to do right now. Oh, need to spell correctly first. And then now when we save, we'll be good to go. So right now, all we can do is add individual items. But if we want to stack items, we should allow that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have to modify this a little bit. We can keep this here, but we want to do something for it first. So we're first going to try and stack it. So for slot index in inventory, get a new variable called our slot item, which is going to be equal to our inventory at the slot index. And if we can stack with, which is a method we're going to create, we pass in the slot item and the item data. And then we're going to update the slot item quantity. We're just going to add 1 to it. We're going to inventory update, emit our signal, pass in the inventory, and then return true. So what does can stack with do? So let's start building this out, where we're going to give it a slot item, like we set up there, which is going to be of the type of inventory item. We're also going to give it an item data, which is of type item data, and it's going to return a bool. So if slot item equals null, so if we don't have this, we return false, which means we're not going to stack. Otherwise, we return the slot item dot item data dot id equals item data dot id, and slot item dot quantity is less than our slot item dot item data dot max stack size. So what we're checking in here is we're seeing if 2 things are true. If the 2 items we're comparing have the same ID, so they're the same item, and then we're checking to see if the quantity is less than our max stack size. If not, we'll be creating a new stack if it's available in our inventory. So all this is well and good, but now we need some UI elements to actually start displaying this inventory. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back down to our inventory folder, and we're going to create a new script, and we're going to call it inventory slot. And we're also going to create a scene called inventory slot. And let's open up this scene. We can attach the inventory slot script to it. We need to make a couple of updates. We're going to change the type to first be a panel. And then we also need to make sure we extend panel in here. We'll give it a class name of inventory slot. We need to add 2 other nodes to this inventory slot, which is going to be a texture rect and a label. We're going to rename this to be item texture, and then our label is just going to be our quantity label. And we want both of these as onReady variables so we can reference them inside of our script. Let's go 2D. Okay, so far right now we don't have anything. The first thing we'll want to do inside of our inventory slot panel is we want to go into this theme overrides, go into our styles, and we're going to do a new style box texture. So in here, we're going to be doing an atlas texture. So let's open this up. And we want to be using the UI pixel PNG that's inside of the assets folder and in the UI subdirectory. So drag this over. And we're going to want to edit the region here. So we want to pick this one here. And you want to make sure that you have the step 16 pixels by 16 pixels and the separation is 2 pixels by 2 pixels. Otherwise, you won't be properly selecting from the sprite sheet. So let's close that. Then we need to go back up to our layout, and we need to do a custom minimum size to this image. And we're going to set this to 24 by 24. So now we can zoom in. We have, this is what our inventory slot is going to look like, and our item is going to sit in front of it, or in the center. We also need to make sure that we have texture margins. So we have to go back down to our style box texture, and we go into our texture margins, and we want to have one on every side. So it fills out that box a little bit nicer. Now inside of our item texture, we have to do some similar stuff where we need to go in and we need to create the custom minimum size is going to be 16 by 16. So we want it to be a little bit smaller so that it's not as big or bigger than our actual inventory slot. So we also need to reset this in our size to be 16 by 16. Then we need to go in here and select full rect. So we're fully selected on here. We want this to also be 1616. And we need to add some margins. So if we go into this custom, we want to add 6 and 6 here, and then -6 and -6. So that's going to position us right square in the middle of this inventory slot. We also need to change our expand mode and our stretch mode. We want to do fit width proportional here, and then we want to do keep aspect centered on the stretch mode. We can save that, and now we're done with the item texture. So we can go to the quantity label now. We're going to set the anchor to this to the bottom right, and we need to do a couple of things to make it actually appear properly. I'm going to put the number 2 in here for right now. Let's go to our theme overrides. Let's change the font color and the font size just to make it a little bit more reasonable for what we want to do. Then we want to go back up here. We want to set our vertical alignment to bottom and then this to right. So it's going to hang out in this bottom right corner here. We're going to scroll down to layout, transform. And you know what? We're actually just going to manually update this. We're just going to drag this here, and I'm just going to pop this where I kind of think works best. Give it a little bit longer over on the left side here. So in case you do get into the like 99 or 100, you'll have space for it and it won't have any funky functionality or unexpected behavior for when you have a lot bigger of a number. So now that we have this, we actually write the script out so that this is going to populate properly. So let's go back in here to our inventory slot script. And what we're going to do first is we're going to make a ready function. And all we're going to do is we're going to set the quantity labels visibility to false. We don't want to see this out of the gate. If we don't do this, we're going to see the quantity, whether it's 1, you know, we don't want the label to be visible until we actually have items. Then we're going to have 2 other methods. One is going to be called display item, which takes in item data of type item data. Oops. And we're going to get a quantity, which is an integer, and we don't return anything here. Yeah, let's just pass for now. And then the other method we're going to have is clear, which does not return anything. In display item, all we're going to be doing is updating the item texture, and we're going to give it the item data's texture. So if the item data is related to a potion, you're going to be passing in the potion's texture. Then we're going to do the quantity label text. It's going to be equal to the string of quantity only if the quantity is greater than 1. else, it's just an empty string. And then we're also going to do quantity visible equals quantity greater than 1. So you know what? Quantity label, sorry. And you know what? We don't even need this if else here because we are marking it as invisible if it's not greater than 1. So if it isn't, it doesn't matter. This will be fine. And we're going to mark our item texture, make it visible. Okay. Then in clear, what we're going to be doing is get our item texture, get the texture, we're going to equal it null. So we're going to clear out the item texture. This is going to be, if we're using it, we want to clear out the texture. The quantity label is going to need to be reset. The quantities label visibility is going to need to be reset. And so is the item texture's visibility. Now we're going to move over to something that I'm going to call the inventory interface. So we can go to our inventory folder. We're going to first add a scene and call it inventory interface. And we need to change the type to be a canvas layer. So this is going to be where we're actually showing the inventory hotbar at the bottom of the screen. And we want it to be a canvas layer instead of a different control because this is going to be static at the bottom of the screen now, regardless of where the player moves. If you use a control, when we move, wherever we place that inventory is just going to stay there. So that's why we're going to be using a canvas layer. So we want to also attach a script to this. We can give this a class name of inventory interface. And before we do that, I want to make one node here, which we are going to do an hbox container. And we're going to rename this to be slots container. So this is going to be where all of our slots, our inventory slots live. I'm going to drag it in here as an onReady because we're going to need it. And we're going to have two constants in here. One, it's going to be our slot size, which is an integer. It's going to equal to 64. All right, we need another constant, which is a slot margin, which is going to be equal to 4. We're going to have a regular variable of inventory slots, which is going to be an array of inventory slot, but we're going to set it to an empty array to start out. So just to jump back up to these constants, I feel like I should explain what these are real quickly. The slot size is going to be the physical size of each inventory slot. And then the slot margin is going to be the space between slots. These are going to be things that we could also do in the editor. I've just opted to use them as constants for right now, just so there's no guesswork or confusion or thinking about if we did it correctly in the editor. We're just going to have it referenced in our script here. So now we need to create our ready method. And I'm actually going to just create the bones of all the other methods first, just so we can see what we're going to be building and we won't get any errors as we're building it out. But we're going to have a on inventory updated method where we get past inventory data, which is going to be of a dictionary. Ooh. Dictionary. Okay, that doesn't return anything. And that's actually all we're going to need in here for right now. So let's go back up to our ready method. And the first thing that we're going to do is we need to have a way to create all of the inventory slots dynamically. So if we ever want to change our max slots constant that we created earlier, our UI is going to adapt automatically. So we need to loop through the max slots that we created in the inventory manager. Then we want to create a variable of a slot, which is of the type inventory slot, and it's going to equal a preload. And we are going to look for our inventory slot scene. So make sure you're selecting the scene and not the script. And then we want to instantiate it. After that, we need to go into our slots container. We're going to add child, and it's going to be our slot. And we're going to go into our inventory slots and append our slot. Then lastly, outside of the for loop, we're going to go into our inventory manager. And we're going to connect to our inventory updated signal and pass in this method of on inventory updated. Then on inventory updated, we're going to update all slot displays to match the inventory state. So anytime the inventory contents change, we're going to be calling this. So we need to loop through each inventory slot. So we can do for slot index in our inventory data. We're going to create a variable for our slot item, which is going to be equal to our inventory data at the slot index. And if slot item isn't null, so if it doesn't equal null, we're going to display it and its quantity. So we're going to go into inventory slots, not that, inventory slots at the slot index. We're going to do display item. That's in the slot item, item data, and its quantity. And then otherwise, if it is null, we're just going to clear the display. We do need to go back our inventory manager script though, and we're going to need to add one more method. So we have add item and can stack with. We also need to add a method for use item. And pass in the slot index, which is an integer. It's not going to return anything. We're going to get a variable to start off with, which is our slot item, which is an inventory item. It's going to equal the inventory at the slot index that we're passing in. And if slot item equals null, return. So if we have an empty slot, can't use it. Now we're going to try and use the item. So if slot item dot item data use player manager dot player, so we're passing in our player, for slot item dot quantity minus equals 1, so we're using 1, which is a successful use of one of our items. Then we need to do if the slot item's quantity is less than or equal to 0, it means we don't have any, so we need to remove it from our inventory. Then lastly, all we have to do is we need to notify via our signal. So we're going to do our inventory updated .emit and then resend out our inventory. Now we're going to go and create something that we're going to call health potion data, which is going to extend from the item data class that we made. So let's go up and find inside of our collectible, inside of health potion, I'm going to create another scene. Sorry, not a scene. We're going to create a script. Call it health potion data. Can't spell. Okay, there we go. Let's open this and give it a class name of health potion data. It's going to extend from our item data class. And now this is where we can give it some specifics of how much we want it to heal. So we'll give it a heal amount, which is an integer. It's going to be equal to 1. And then we're going to use our init method, where we're going to give it the ID, which is equal to health potion. The name is going to be equal to health potion. And the max stack size is going to be equal to 5. So we can only stack 5 potions at any given time. And we need one more method of use, where we pass in the player, and it's going to be a bool. And we need to check if the player can be healed. So if the player's current health is less than the player's max health, then player.heal. And we give it the heal amount. Return true. Otherwise, we return false. We have to do one last thing before this will work. Is if we go to our 2D here, there's nothing here. So we need to make a couple of updates to make sure that this is all going to look proper. So inside of our slots container, we're going to do the first thing here is we're going to set the custom minimum size to 24 pixels. And in transform, it's also going to be the size of 24 pixels. We're going to anchor it on the center bottom. And then we're going to go into our theme overrides, and in separation under constants, we're going to set it to 4. And then I'm going to just manually drag this up a little bit so it's not sitting right at the bottom of the screen, but that's where I'm going to put it. And that's all that we have to do right now. So let's see if we can play this. I'm going to go on level 2. I'm actually going to add, I'm going to duplicate another health potion, and I'm going to put one over here so we can try and get multiple. Let's play this scene. All right, that's all working. Okay. We're not seeing our inventory though. Okay, so something is not connected right. Okay, so it looks like I actually forgot a pretty important step, which is going to be to emit our signal right now. So now I should be able to go back to level 2 and play this. And I also forgot another important piece, is that we actually have to add this interface as a child to all of our scenes. So or all of our levels. So I need to go into our level script, and we need to create a inventory interface. We're going to preload our inventory interface scene. Then we're going to add a child of the inventory interface. And now when we play this, can I not spell? Oh, I can't just do the preload. I need to instantiate it. I can't do it that way. So now when we replay it, we'll be okay. All right. The coins are working now. Okay. So the problem is now is that in our collect inside of the health potion, we're just healing immediately. So we need to make a little change to this. Get rid of this. Everything else can stay the same, but we need to modify the if statement to be inventory manager add item, and we pass in the potion data, which is something that we need to actually give it. So we don't need this anymore. We no longer need this. We're going to be passing in instead a potion data, which is going to be of the type health potion data. Need to add that colon. All right. We need to actually give it that now. So we need to go into our potions, and we go to new health potion data, new health potion data. All right. Actually, I think we're just going to make this a normal variable. And instead, we're going to do func ready. Inside of our ready, we're going to do super ready. So we're going to get the parents ready method. And then we're going to create a potion data. Potion data is going to equal health potion data dot new. And then the potion data dot texture is going to be equal to our sprite dot texture. Okay, let's try this. All right, there we go. We got it working. Now, obviously, the label, the quantity label is not very clear, but we can make some adjustments there. I think that just wraps it up for this tutorial. And in the next one, we'll pick it up so we can actually start using these potions now that we're collecting them.